Hey everyone, welcome back to Backstage Banter. In this episode, Jay and I are finally in the flesh doing this podcast. It's our first time to do an episode face-to-face, and we had a really interesting conversation about creativity and how we deal with stresses that come with being a leader and stage manager, production manager, and the things that come up and how do we deal with what that stress is. We discuss a lot of different ideas, so sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy.
Bryan,
what's
welcome
up, Jay?
to San Diego.
Yeah,
man,
finally together doing a podcast.
What are you doing in sunny California, San Diego over Thanksgiving weekend?
Well, just that. I'm coming to see family and friends and, get back to what it is like to be home. I miss San Diego so much.
You said home. I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
When you left here, after your MFA and went out into the big world, did you see yourself coming back? Or did you always have a yearning for it somewhere,
I mean, once I left San Diego, I wanted to come back right away. And I've come back several times since then. And I feel like I come and go like twice a year or so. Last time I was here was in February. Time before that was last July. So I come back pretty frequently. So it's nice.
And isn't it cool? Because I do this every time when I go out to do a gig and I come flying back into Lindbergh Field that you just say, man, and you see the skyscrapers on the left and the Balboa Park on the right, and the knucklehead next to you, and you're like, I live here, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, you live here? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful place.
Yeah, man. And it's funny because Mark and I have had these conversations about if it wasn't here, where would you be?
Right.
Like, where would you go, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, Hawaii, right? But even that's changed a little bit now because our first plan was talking about retirement. Oh my God, we were going to move to Maui. We're going to, go get a house in Maui, and went there several times. I used to do children's theater there, so I really fell in love with Maui particularly many, many years ago. But the more I don't know. It's just it's not the same. It's not the same. Yeah. And I don't know that lure of paradise is as strong as it used to be.
Yeah.
And I just don't know. I mean, where would you go? Like, what city would you go? Denver? I mean,
I mean, honestly, if I was gonna move anywhere and I could be anywhere, I'd probably be in New York. I love being in New York. Yeah. I love the vibe. I love being able to walk places because in Orlando you just cannot do that unless you're downtown. And even if you're downtown, things close down so early. So I really love the walkability of New York.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
San Diego just has a very special place in my heart because just like the food scene is great, the ocean's here, the weather is amazing, the people are great. So it's just a really good vibe here. Which is why I keep coming back.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting when you say the ocean's right here because how long have I lived here now, and how many times have I not taken advantage of going to the ocean, right?
Yeah.
When you're like, oh, I would go there every day, right? When I moved from LA, I'm going to college, I'm going to say, I want to go to the beach every day. And that lasted for 3 days.
Yeah.
And then you go through that PB traffic, you're like, fuck that,
That's
I don't want to do that anymore.
That's very true.
Yeah, but it's a great spot. I mean, I didn't realize how much theater is in San Diego. There's a lot. I mean, community theater, which we can, you and I have an idea here. We're going to start helping out some community theaters we think is on our horizon. Going into the online content area there, Bryan, the dark side. Yes, man. Get away from these 4-year university things that are just like sucking the life out of students, man.
Yeah, and if you haven't listened to our episode on the syllabus, we have an episode about the syllabus where we talk about the danger of what the syllabus is for universities and for students.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it's interesting. I came across an article, and I can't remember the name of it, and I'll have to share it with you, about this really intense study about how to teach differently because the learning has evolved and the teaching hasn't. We've talked about it. And I started reading it and I'm like, wait a second, I do that.
Yeah.
I do that. Wait, I do that too. And I've been doing it for 20 years, right? Like, who are these guys?
Yeah.
But the way that when I got hired to be a teacher, first off, I was in the music business. Like, what am I doing being a teacher, right? We've gone through that a couple of times, but all these people had a pedagogical approach towards teaching, and I didn't. Like, I don't know,
Yeah,
and the only thing I could come up with, Bryan, was I don't want to teach or treat students the way that I was taught or my teachers were fine, most of them. But back in the day, man, there wasn't a lot of sympathy for mental health. They didn't even think about it. Like, it wasn't a thing, right?
Yeah.
Mental health was not even on the radar. And the stigma of mental health for students to actually admit it, they're like, oh, no.
Yeah.
So everything got swept under the table.
It's like, don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and here's the thing, man. I didn't even really know, right? Until somebody tells you. You should go to a counselor, right? And then, no, I'm good, right? And I started getting caught by some of my friends, right? Because they would say, oh, you look tired. I stayed in the theater all night, right? And no, because I had fucking depression, right? And thanks, man. And so it's they didn't believe in all. They thought, because it was the 1980s and it was San Diego State, and we were rated the #1 party school according to Playboy magazine in 1984, and that was the year I started. And I'm like, and I didn't even drink, like, I just sometimes, it was interesting, but that's what's happening. And I think that the online content thing, to make it full circle, I think that this is where it's headed. I think students, adults even, are like your
because
sister, right?
when people want to learn stuff, they go to YouTube, they go to courses that are online, because people don't necessarily want to go to school for 4 years to get a degree in something. And even when you get the degree, 9 times out of 10, maybe that's a little much, maybe like 5 times out of 10, you don't even learn things as deeply as you could, as if you just go.
What was your ratio, you said, that don't learn? That don't learn what you need to? Like,
5 times out of 10, and 50%.
It's more. I can tell you it's more, because I hear the students say, why? Stuff.
Why am I learning shit that I'm never going to use?
Forget it. I'm going to forget it. And the idea of cramming for quizzes and cramming for
just to get
midterms.
The score, and then you forget it, and it's not even useful to you.
Well, I mean,
it's a waste of time.
Yeah, and that's what happened to me too, because I was so I was running. I just kept running into the brick wall. It's like, man, I don't want to learn this. And you should learn this. You'll be a well-rounded human being. And I'm like, I don't care what the name of the fucking lizard was 5 million years ago.
Yeah,
exactly. I was resistant. But listen, in my theater classes and my the classes that I loved and I'm passionate about, and I stayed overnight in the theater until it was 4 in the morning. That's what made my world. That's what made my world.
That's why I think that these courses and online stuff and kind of what we're working towards is going to be really useful, is because if people want to learn about a specific genre, about music or opera or ballet, whatever those sections are, they can focus and just say, I want to focus on this. I don't care about all the other shit. I just want to learn about this one thing. That's what I do when I want to learn about something, or I'm curious about something. I go onto YouTube and I look it up and I learn how to do that thing, and I get really good at that one thing.
Where do you get inspired to do those
care.
things? Like, what inspires you to go, I want to go learn about that thing? Like, it's just life, right? Like,
well, sometimes it's life. Sometimes I see something and I'm like, oh, I wonder how that is. Like, one specific example is about AC/DC power. And I had a conversation.
I thought you went to the band.
No, I had a conversation with a really talented automation person once, and we started talking about circuitry and automation, and he started talking about the power behind it. And it's like, oh, I don't know anything about this, and I think knowing something about that is valuable for me being a production manager and a stage manager to know, not that I need to know how to troubleshoot it all the time, but just having that context. And I went on YouTube and I learned all about DC power and how it works and the circuitry behind it and the amperage and all that stuff. And so there's stuff all over YouTube on that kind of stuff and pretty much everything in the world. And it's just one example that, when people are curious enough about something and they want to learn, when it's available to them, they're gonna go look at it.
Right. And speaking of power and being a production manager, those kind of things kind of freaked me out when I started in the business. As suddenly I was a production manager, and I'm like, wait a second, I'm supposed to know like
everything,
what 400 amps of 3-phase means. And I can't tell you how many times Rick Stanley from Sound Image explained to me what 3-phase meant, right? And thank you, Rick, by the way. And to me, I was same with rigging. Like I was petrified that I didn't know anything about rigging, and the truss was going to fall. Like this is where my anxiety when I did my first few ballroom shows.
Yeah, like that concert where everything fell out of the sky.
The Indiana State Fair. Yeah. But it was just anxiety. Like, did I really? There's a riggers. These are
that's
the
why you have
people
people
that do
there.
this for a living. Trust your team. Trust your team. But it didn't make the anxiety go away. And what it did for a while was this whole, which is a bigger discussion, is this imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And whether you can admit it, like I freely admit it, right? Like fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think that's really hard for leaders and production managers to acknowledge that they have an imposter syndrome, because it's often expected of us to know everything, have the answers, be able to solve the problems. And we're humans too, like there's shit that we don't know and there's answers that we have to find from other people. And I feel like stage management in particular is very much under the gun and under the pressure of knowing everything, being prepared for every possible situation. And when we get caught in a scenario that we've never experienced before and we don't know what to do, then it's like, oh, well, you're a bad stage manager because you didn't do this, or you performed not good enough. And there's a lot of shaming that can go on. And also the voice inside of our head of like, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I fucked this up. I didn't do this good enough.
Yeah,
but it's like, it's, even someone like you who has a lot of experience, who's worked in so many different types of situations, have experienced pretty much everything under the sun, the fact that someone like you who has that experience still feels imposter syndrome says a lot. And we talked about this with Carrie as well, where she even has stuff like that. I think it's a natural human thing to experience that, but it's never goes away though.
It never goes away unless you can conquer it in a way. But you have to, you got to go kick the imposter in the ass and watch yourself do the work that you think you can't do, and then acknowledge, hey, I just did that.
Yeah,
right?
I just did that.
And I don't think that we spend enough time in the hey, look at me, right? We're like, boom, show over, next, load out. Like, when do we actually get a chance to like sit and go, what? Unless it's in a debriefing with everybody, and you're like, but in your own personal debriefing about what could I have done better? How did I? Was I really an imposter?
Yeah.
Look, the show went. The client is happy. There's a standing ovation, and nobody got hurt, right? Like, okay, like I got it. The imposter syndrome for me thing came in the art world for a while, and as you look around my apartment, Brian, you see a bunch of paintings, and but there was a long time that I didn't know. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it because I'm not a painter.
Yeah,
I'm not an artist. And then words started coming to me, and I started writing songs and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'm not a songwriter. Yeah. I'm not a writer. I wrote a one act. Oh, I'm not a writer. I'm not this. I'm not that.
Yeah.
Why? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not a photographer. And I love to do all those things. And what brought it to my attention to say, really, fuck you, it was my older brother in Los Angeles. He saw some of my photographs. When I go to cities, I go out at night and I love taking pictures, and I put a black and white filter on them, and I get Ansel Adams for a second, and I don't really share, but I do with my brother because he's a photographer and he appreciates. You got to join this online photo club. He said, your work is good. They will appreciate it. Join. I'm like, no, join, no. And I finally acquiesced. Okay, fine, I'll join. I went to my first meeting. And we show up in front. Oh my God! They said, "Oh, that's new. Oh, that's beautiful. And that went on. And I'm trying to be humble. And I go, "Yours is beautiful too. Look at And then at like the third week, the real photographer, quote air quotes, the real photographer in the group asked me, "Was that like a Nikon Baba with the lens that's the doobity doo?" And I'm like, "No." He goes, "What are you shooting with?" I go, "iPhone 9." Right? Because I keep my phone in my back pocket, and when I see a shot, I don't go out and compose shots. I'll be walking down the street, and I go, that looks cool. And I take my phone out, and I take a shot. Yeah. And at that point, the discussions about how good my shots were kind of went into this weird kind of shift. Like, so that's what freaked me out. I'm like, fuck, I'm not a photographer. What am I? Why? Because I didn't use the phone, and then it was my brother. He goes, you know what, fuck that, man. You got good work. Yeah. And then I left the group, and I haven't come back since.
Because they started judging you because it was taken on an iPhone.
Did they, did he say anything like, you can't shoot with an iPhone? No, it was me going, I'm not a photographer because I shoot with an iPhone. Mm-hmm. But then you look at the results and you're like, that's a really good picture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you got to get a little bit of ego or if it's not a good picture, then admit it, right?
Yeah. But if it's a good photo, it's a good photo.
That's the thing, man.
I'm a photographer as well.
Right.
And
define photographer. What, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the question.
I think a photographer is someone who has a passion for taking photos.
Yeah, thank you. Not about, gotta get the f-stop with the do. If you see something that your eye sees and you want to capture it, and you take a picture, you are a photographer.
I mean, that's half of being a good photographer, in my opinion, is having the eye for something that looks good, how to take the photo. It's one thing to just point and shoot, but then it's another thing to, like, see it before you take it.
That's right.
And then you take it, and it's a good photo. Yeah. So, like, people with really expensive cameras take shitty photos.
Right,
sometimes.
Right.
So it's like, it's not all about the camera. Yeah, it's like half the battle is being someone who sees that.
Yeah. It's interesting because, I showed a couple of students, we were talking about the Super Bowl stuff, and a couple of them were in black and white. And why do you shoot in black and white? And I'm like, boy, I've never been asked that question before. I just kind of like it. That's not really a great answer, but it made me think about kind of why, right? Mm-hmm. And, and what I came up with is in Woodland Hills, there's this like crickety old light post, and everything looks old, and to me that history it looks black and white to me.
Right.
Probably because I grew up on black and white movies too, right?
Yeah.
So and then watching color, but to me it was like, you take a picture, and then that moment is gone.
Mm-hmm.
You're no longer in the now, which is another whole conversation.
Yeah, right.
But there it goes, and boom, and now that moment is gone. So every moment that we take, especially with a photograph, becomes history almost instantaneously. Mm-hmm. And I think in my subconscious that those moments of history are black and white.
Yeah.
That's all. That's why.
Almost like black and white represents the past.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. But when I'm taking it, I see color.
Yeah, for sure.
My eye sees color, but and now. So staying in the moment, staying in the now, it helps to relieve your anxiety too, because staying in the past. But I think that's what I can come up with. And then I also had the question about, why do you paint abstract?
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, because I don't do oranges in a fruit bowl, right? And then somebody asked me again, well, why do you do that? And it's forgiving. Right? Mm-hmm. I never know what colors I'm going to use. I never know what I'm going to do.
But you also probably need, because we're so organized all the time.
Thank you. Exactly.
It's like you need a place to be messy.
Yes, exactly.
And be creative.
Yep. And that's exactly what I came back with was, because your shows have to be perfect. You can't color outside the lines.
Yeah.
You have to be perfect. And if you're not perfect, you can lose the gig, right?
Yeah.
And that goes back to that episode that we did about being perfect all the time.
Right.
But I think this allows me to, and now that I live by myself, I don't care what anybody thinks. Right? Before I was like, Mark's going to see. His father was an art scholar and he taught at UCLA, and I'm not an artist. I'm not a thing.
Yeah. And
then the same with the writing, and for all of you out in the audience that are thinking the same thing. The big breakthrough for me was listening to, I had heard about Rick Rubin's book that he just came out with maybe a year ago called The Creative Act, A Way of Being. And it's on Audible. For those of you that don't know who Rick Rubin is, one of the most prolific hip-hop producers of all time. And Google him. But he narrated the book himself. And they're 5-minute chapters, and you don't have to listen to them in any order. But at the very beginning, he says, you are an artist. Give yourself that. Don't think that you're not. And it's like he gave me permission to think of myself. And coming from Rick Rubin, I'm like, cool. Yeah. And then some of that anxiety went away, and then I sold my first painting to Laura Zingle.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. She's like, oh, here. I'm like, I love that one. I'm like, really? Here, you can have it. She goes, no, I want to pay for it.
Wow.
That's cool. Another whole weird thing about artists and how they price. I'm like, I just give it away. And they're like, don't do that. You're going to cheapen it for the rest of us. I'm like, well, I actually feel good in my heart to give it away. Yeah. And you guys, I don't know, how do you monetize?
Right. I saw that just last week there was a painting it wasn't a painting, it was I guess a sculpture, a banana that was bought for 30 cents, duct taped onto a canvas. Someone bought it for like $6 million.
Exactly.
No
and
joke.
Who gets to call it art, right?
Yeah.
And Duchamp, right? Is that, if I remember correctly, the urinal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a urinal, right?
Yeah, crazy.
We went to it was a Metropolitan Museum of Art, and they had a boxing glove hanging from a rope in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And some people go, why is that art? Well, because the artist thinks it was.
Mm-hmm.
And you all are paying money and going into that room and looking at it and going, why is this art? And that's what it should be doing.
Yeah.
Right? It should be making you talk. It should be making you talk.
That's true.
Yeah.
Also, just for our listeners, be sure to leave a comment in the podcast because we'd love to hear from you. You can also email us a question at backstagebanterthepodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to do that because we want to hear what you think and what your comments are. If you have any ideas, be sure to reach out to us.
You know what would be cool is if you all that are listening defined artists, defined your version of it, and do any of you also do that same thing that imposter syndrome.
Is there anything like any creative outlets that you use to kind of keep your brain in a sane sort of mode?
And it's interesting because that's what I do with my mental health days for the students. We take the same day off, and for that hour, no doing homework for other classes and no napping. You have to do something, and I say creative for yourself. Whatever that is, reading a book. I mean, baking cookies is creative, right?
Yeah, definitely.
There's so much stuff that is creative, but just close the laptop and just do something for yourself that makes you happy.
Yeah.
And then write a paragraph, and I have to do it too. I don't get to take meetings. I don't get to text people, and I just close my laptop as hard as it is, which is another whole topic of do you ever get away from it?
Well, we just had an episode on boundaries.
Yeah.
Be sure to check that episode out. We talk a lot about how do you set boundaries and expectations and stuff. So this is sort of an extension of that.
Yeah, we do banter a lot and go back to things. The creativity part, we had a discussion in my stage management classroom. I asked them, where do you think you belong? Right? Because theaters can put the stage management department in production, they put it in artistic, they put it in performance, they put it in design and production. We're kind of
technical.
Yeah, we're kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And at San Diego State, I removed us from the design and technology area and put us in with the performance area.
Yeah.
Because of Actors Equity Association.
Yeah.
Right?
Makes sense.
And people are nicer. Oops, bleep that. But it brought up the question of how our stage managers creative people. Right, not just book. Not just that your paperwork looks good and you're creative.
Yeah.
And I don't think the students really realize until we start. And you and I had this conversation about, they are part of the breadth of the production, right? So when you're calling cues, right, it's
the
a
pacing,
rhythm.
the rhythm, yeah.
And if you're not in the rhythm, man, if you're not in the flow, you feel it, 100%. And the actors feel it, and. So how are you not an artist, right?
Yeah.
If you're feeling and
there is some sort of artistic expression and
absolutely.
the way that people call cues, the way they set the cues up, the rhythm, the cadence, even how you structure your cue book. That's a creative sort of piece that goes into building the way that you're going to do that.
Yeah.
I even think that the way that we speak to people is sort of like. I don't know if it's creative, but people do get creative about the kinds of ways that they might do company business. They have a special little thing that sets the tone for the rehearsal, and I would even say that's creativity.
It absolutely is, and you know what? You go on the road, Brian, you've been on the road, the call board, man.
Yes.
I got to tell you, that's where creativity also comes from. And for those of you that, you all know what the call board is, but you know a good call board when you see one, and you're like, somebody put some. That's nice, man.
Yeah.
Put the time into it.
Yeah, even wayfinding signs too. People get creative with that too.
And the way you put tape down, the way that you spike the floor, I think there's so much that we just take for granted. But you can tell when a floor has not been, the ground plan has not been taped out properly, you know, and you can tell when it has. And you're like, that is a good tape down. And I just did this with our production in New Brain. It's in dress rehearsals this week, and we're off tonight. But Maggie and Aiden, they they own it's in the black box, and it's really dark backstage. But I went back there and I'm like, wow, they taped down that where the hazards are, where the booms are, on the door pull, like they had it nailed. And I was just like really impressed with the way the prop table was laid out.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference. You can tell the difference.
Those things make a huge difference, and it really shows how much care I think goes into that. And a lot of people, like you said, take that for granted, because when it's done and it looks really nice, it makes everything so much easier. But when it's not like that, it's so easy to you miss things, or you can't find shit. You run into everything.
Yeah. Besides the safety factor. Right. Which that's what they were doing. But the way that I said, Maggie, look at the way that look at the way your lines, like you made the sidewalk, like the path, like exactly the same width, and we just noticed things like that. And so don't think that you're not creative people. Stage managers too, okay? You guys, you are part of the breath. You are part of the play. You are just as much of a, you may not be on the stage, but you are on the stage. And, so.
Yeah, I think it's super easy to distinguish that when you're calling things like dance, in particular, when I'm calling dance, it feels more like you're the other performer, because
there's no script.
And there's no script, so it's all physical, it's all on timing, it's all, there's a relationship there. And whenever you're calling with lines, there's a relationship there. When you're calling with aerial acts, there's a relationship there. So I feel like there's the constant relationship to what's happening on stage and being a calling stage manager all the time. And because you're in response. If something doesn't go right, you have to respond to that like right then. And that affects everything.
Absolutely. So, and you know what else? We are storytellers, stage managers. When I go back to give notes when I was just, at the Oak Globe, and I had to go give notes to actors, I'm like, okay, I just look at it as like storytelling. And, sometimes that worked, and sometimes they would, no, I didn't, and come back, I did what, and I always had a line for that, because it's so interesting. Sometimes actors are very, I did that, but did you see that they did this? And the first time that happened, I'm like, oh my God, giving notes is hard. It's hard, man.
That's an art too.
Even though imposter syndrome, again, I'm not a director. Why am I going to go give that actor a note about the pace? I kept my notes at first was, don't cross so fast, because the light cue has to, there was very much, it wasn't about their character development or anything like that. But I finally got to a place where, hey, okay, well, did you see that this person does this? And I would say, you know what? No, I'm going to take a look at that tomorrow night, right? And that was your get out of jail free card. Oh yeah, I'm going to look at that, right? You sound supportive, and then you walk out the door and you went, oh God, right? But if you say, I'm going to look at that. I'm going to look at that for you, and then by the next night they're on to something else. Sometimes, they're not like.
Absolutely.
So, man, we should do an episode on the bullshit lines that stage managers, they say. Don't ever say I don't know, people. Don't ever say that. We should do that. Like, what are the no words? Right? Because you're supposed to know. Not say, just say I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out.
I'll find out about that. And I'll circle back with you.
Yeah. Don't say I don't know, but I'll find out. Just say I'm on it. Right? Storytelling. There's a perfect example that we are storytellers. Not bullshitters. We are storytellers, because we have to think about how is that person going to take this, right? Like, so it's been a good time. It's been a good time.
What else is on your...
I'm glad you came to San Diego, Brian Runyon.
Yeah, likewise.
That we got to spend some time together, and we went to a secret place where...
We did go to a secret place.
We did, and we'll tell you about that at some point.
We might be doing another podcast together is it March or April, the Iowa thing?
It's in June.
It's in June.
Yeah.
I was way off. Yeah, so we might be doing another
podcast. If only
podcast.
I had a reason to go to Florida,
Yeah, I know, right? But who wants to go to Florida?
Honestly, if there was... Oh, man, don't get me started. I love Florida.
Do I have to go back to Florida?
No, you don't. You don't. I told you, you're going to stay here. Start looking for work, right?
Yeah,
there
I know.
You go. There you go. Get transferred out here. But the family thing has to work out, too.
That's true.
Just abandon your family, like I did.
Is there anything else on your paper?
Or do you want to? Let's see. My art is the antithesis of perfection. There's something. Why do I always paint in the abstract? This one was my 2 words. This is a tangent now. My 2 words of the day are for today. For what?
For what?
For what? And that came up because I started thinking about getting away for a few days. And it's almost impossible, man, because all I can think about is I'm not going to see my email for 3 days because I'm not going to look at my email.
Yeah.
But when I get back, there's going to be 400. And then that anxiety is like, how do you ever get away?
You don't.
And then you go like, why? Why am I, not why do I care so much, but why? For what? For what, man? What do we... what are we doing here? Go away for 3 days and don't fucking care about the email.
Yeah, I know.
And I know it's you just can't turn that switch off, but that was what I was thinking a lot about. And I've been struggling for a couple of weeks. You've been a part of this. Is like, for what, man? It's like, why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we let others? Why do I worry about whether they're read my out of the office fucking salutation on my email? Because they don't care. They don't like send. I'll be gone for 3 days. Send.
Yeah.
Please don't text me. Send.
Read it when he gets back.
Yeah, man. It made me sad because I thought, how do we ever get away? And then I see some people who are like, yeah, fuck it, I'm going away. I'm going away. Do not contact me.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah, well, I think it's, for me, I actually have a really easy time compartmentalizing that. Like, I feel like I'm really good at that. And, like, I only check my email 3 times a day. I check it in the morning and the mid-afternoon.
When you're gone for the weekend on vacation?
Yeah, I haven't checked. I mean, I checked my email yesterday because I knew I had some things that were coming in.
Yeah.
But, like, I didn't check my email last night, today. I'm not going to check it tomorrow. And I'd probably check it on Friday because I have a load in on Saturday. So probably just see if anything came in. But like, no, for myself, I create that hard boundary where it's like, if I'm not at work, I have my notifications turned off. So as soon as I get on my Wi-Fi network, my phone goes into that specific mode and I don't even see the notifications pop up.
Yeah.
So someone has to text me in order for me to get it. But sometimes I just won't read it and I'll just leave it unread and I'll say I'll get to that later. And I think that we're in this like culture where it's like instant gratification, instant responding all the time, and people will email you and then they'll text you, "Hey, I just emailed you."
That's the word.
Or "Hey, I just emailed you. Like, did you read it?" And it's like there's no room for space to just think and get back to you whenever. Like, I even have something on my email signature now which I actually got from Laura Ingalls, bringing her up again, is where it says, I'm responding at a time that's convenient for me. Please feel free to respond at a time that's convenient for you.
And isn't that passive aggressive and bitchy? And it's perfect. Yeah, it's like, listen, get off of me.
Yeah,
man. Get off me.
Yeah.
Back off. Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. I like that term.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's tough sometimes, and I just have to, I don't want to say I just care. I need to care less, but that's not.
I think you care too much.
That's the problem.
I think
I care too much, and it's getting to the point where it's like, you know what? I don't know.
Well, I think you got to care a little bit more about your own.
Yeah, self-care. Self-care.
Yeah.
And I think
to me, like for myself, I'm not going to check this email, or I'm going to take a break from this for 6 hours or however long and say, I just need this time for myself to like focus on something that I need to do, or if you need to prepare for class or whatever that is, be like, I need to do that for myself. So when I go, I feel prepared. I feel like I've got my shit together. I feel like my mentality is in the right place. And sometimes it's a hard thing to do because we talk to ourselves a lot worse than we talk to other people. Like people come to us and they're stressed and they don't know what they're doing. And we're like, it's going to be fine. Like, it's not that bad. Everything's going to work out. But then as soon as it happens to us, we're like, God damn it, you're such a fucking idiot.
Yeah,
don't know what you're doing.
And the 10 other voices in your head are yelling at you too.
And you're like, So it becomes a little bit much. But, I think being kinder to ourselves is what I have to always remind myself to like, be kinder to myself, give myself a break sometimes. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be great, that we shouldn't, strive for the best and for excellence. But that we're still humans and we still need a break every once in a while. We still need to, have that humanist approach to ourselves as well, that we aren't machines, we're not robots.
Yeah, and it's hard to teach that. And when I'm at tech and we take a break, I insist that the stage manager go outside, like go away, run away, or else they're gonna all come at you and all need shoelaces that are broken. And it's like, learn now is that the break is also for you. Yeah. Or else. And I used to think I was weak for saying that. Like when I was a stage manager, I'm not gonna take a break. I'm good, right? Yeah. I need to serve everybody. Yeah. And if I didn't, I wasn't doing my best job. And you do nobody any good if you're not healthy, and exactly. So that whole idea of and self-care. It
doesn't even have to be. It's not that you can't talk to someone or someone can't ask you a question, but it's like it doesn't have to be like, oh yeah, I'll get on that right now. It's like, okay, I hear you. I'll do that when we get back from break. Yeah. So I think that like setting the expectation around the fact that we're on break and I hear you. It's not like, hey, I'm not going to talk to you because we're on break. But it's just like, I'm not going to do that right now because we're not back for another 15 minutes,
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think that just like, again, I feel like it goes back to boundaries and enforcing those. And, you can't build trust without boundaries. And I think that's a really important aspect of being a leader. And in building trust with your team is that you have to enforce boundaries. You have to set them and you have to enforce them. And if those don't exist, then you cannot build trust. So I think that's just a really important component to take away just as leaders. Yeah. That those have to be in place for people to really want to follow you.
Man, absolutely. And what a great idea you just gave me. We should do at the end of these podcasts 3 takeaways. The 3 takeaways, or the readers shall say
Reader's Digest.
The listeners. Readers? Listeners?
Listeners. Yeah. So what's your 3 takeaways?
Oh, my 3 takeaways? For what? So it's like, come on. The boundaries thing, I think, is important. I think being good with who I am as an artist and not being ashamed, because I do write some good fucking lyrics. Yeah. And you've heard some. Yeah. And I think that's a takeaway to appreciate what we do and at the same time appreciate those that may be critical in a helpful way. A helpful way, yeah.
My 3 takeaways, that we have creativity as a part of our job, even though people don't realize it. I think that just the boundaries thing, I think, has been sort of interwound to this conversation. Yeah. And that, like, to not be so hard on ourselves. I feel like for me, since we started talking about the creativity part of it and, letting ourselves be a little messy in a lot of the extra, creativity type things, writing or music or painting or whatever it is. So yeah, those 3 things.
Yeah, man. What's the 3rd one?
That was the 3rd one.
Oh, that was the 3rd one.
Yeah. All right. Just being messy.
Here comes the props part of the You think you're creative, Brian?
Yeah.
Here's a canvas and some paints, baby. Yeah, just start painting. Let's just paint as we roll ourselves out of here, right? Yeah, that's what the props is going to do. It's going to have us paint throughout the whole podcast.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Our technology thwarted us, and so there you have it. But there's a real canvas, and real paints, nice. And, whatever it is, you all go out there and paint and make a mess.
Yeah, we're going to get painting. So thanks for joining us for this episode.
All right, guys. Yeah, take care, Brian. It's really good to have you in San Diego. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll talk to you next week.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for sticking to the end. If you like this episode, please like it, subscribe it, rate it, comment, share it with your friends and your colleagues, and leave us an email at backstagebanterthepodcast@gmail.com, or you can leave us a comment and let us know what your disruptive innovation is and if you have any ideas for the podcast, and we would love to hear those. So we'll talk to you soon.